and then we're going to share. So again, normally what's happening is kind of like yesterday, I kind of give a PowerPoint, and today I'm going to kind of show you some Excel stuff. So we're kind of flipping back and forth because we kind of have the process of how we do this in Excel, and then we have the actual content of what we're conceptually in theory thinking about and trying to accomplish with these things. And so Keith, I posted something for the Society for Benefit Cost Analysis. There's an actual society for this. So I just posted an announcement that has a link to their newsletter. So they actually had this whole thing of how using benefit cost analysis has resulted in some regulation changes for people that are interested in those sorts of things. Some of the business students are not, but some of the more social minded, maybe. Yeah. Examples. And then I'll post the cat thing when we get done because I totally forgot. So let me move to share. Okay, here we are. There we go. Okay, so we're gonna kind of look a little bit closer. Let me enlarge this thing because we need it to be big. So again, I post these Excel files, and I'll post this one, but I want to kind of get into some of the issues when you're doing the assignments, because we have two kind of sets of things that we're working on. Homeworks, which I made up, and assignments, which come from the book. So the first set assignment is from chapter 2. So you should have kind of started on that last week. That assignment had 3 questions. It was pretty easy, and it really dealt with kind of just getting started. And Keith kind of asked about some of this yesterday. So I'll also talk about that at the end, but let's look at this thing. So here's 2 different sets of projects. And remember yesterday I was talking about projects with different time scales. So if you look at this project A and project B, you notice right away that first of all, project A is double the investment, and you get most of the return in that first year, and then you don't get much of anything. So it's going to have what back in the day in the 60s, before we had calculators, as you remember me complaining about not having one until the 80s, we used to have this thing called payback. And a simple way was like, oh, okay, so if it cost me $200, I get my money back within the first year. So that's payback. So that tells you get a quick return. And normally that quick return was very advantageous for businesses. Nowadays, we're really looking for that long-term investment in community a little bit more. But back in the day, an easy way to think about how fast you get more money back was something called payback. But it doesn't account at all for the value of time. So you notice the total cost is $200, the total benefit is $250. So you have a net benefit, if you didn't discount, of $50. So if you wanted to have a cost benefit ratio without discounting, this would be the cost, this would be the benefit. If you wanted to discount, then you'd have to actually bring it this way, and you would get an MPV down here, you notice, at 12% of $23.21. And here is in fact the formula. MPV, interest rate, is located in B12, wherever B12 is. There's the discount rate right here. So it gives the address of B12. Again, when I do these formulas, I click on the cell and it will enter up there. So when you click on this formula, it actually highlights the cell. So first there's B12. So here's B12. And then there's D4. So here's D4. Only that is discounted. So that's all that goes. Let me see. It's pretty big, but maybe I can. Now I want to go up to 300. Okay, so there's 400. So here's the formula. And then when I click on it, it will show me where I'm located. So here's the interest rate. If I don't want to hard enter that, I just click on it and it will automatically enter in the formula. So you can either go to the function and insert it as a function, or you can actually remember the formula, which is what I do, and I just start typing it equals MPV. First is the interest rate. So you click on the interest rate. Then what do you need to discount? In this problem for project A, you're only discounting the first year. You're not discounting year 0. Just year 1, 2, 3, 4. Year 0 is not discounted. So that's only why I'm only discounting this first year. And then I'm adding in year 0, which is not discounted. So you have to manually add this in. Even though the formula says it's MPV, what it is actually is PV. It's the present value of all these streams. So that's how we got this answer of $23.21. So even though we think we're making $50, if you account for the time value of waiting, you really only make $23.21, because you could have taken that $200, invested it at 12%, and really gotten, some money from that, some interest. And so you're really only making above 12%, $23.21. So how much are you really making as far as a percentage return? We go down here, what's the IRA? Internal rate of return, 25%. So you're not making 12, you're actually making 25% if you invest in this thing. And then if you click on this formula, it will just show you when you do an IRR. They're very easy to do on the computer, but to do them by hand, it's a search and destroy mission. So that's why I like to use Excel. So all you do is highlight the whole row, but you've got to have zeros in here. If you don't get a return, you've got to have zeros, because if you didn't put anything there for years 2, 3, and 4, you would come up with a much different number. Actually not on this one because it's after the 250, but down here where it's here, you will come up with a different number if you don't include those, because they'll think it's just 1 year. If you just put one number, it think it's 1 year. So if it takes 4 years to pay out, then you have to give it 4 years. In this case, it's a 1 year payout. So that's how we got this 25%. And
yeah. Just as a quick question, would you just recommend that whenever we're doing anything in Excel to never leave those cells blank? Just always put zeros?
I would always, you know why? Because it helps you remember what you're doing.
Yeah, yeah.
Because the other thing that you're doing always is, you notice we always are comparing 2 options. Mm-hmm. This or that, with or without. So that's kind of what helps us be economists. Because accountants don't need 2 options. Accountants do hardwire, hard money things. How much did I spend? I don't have to worry about what went on over here. I'm always saying, how much did I spend on this one? But when you're working as an economist, which is really what we're doing here, as opposed to accountants, some of the stuff we're going to end up costing is because I didn't do that one, I gave something up. That becomes a cost. Mm. That's what the opportunity cost of waiting. Did I really spend 12%? No, it's just the cost of waiting. So there's no money that I paid out for waiting, right?
Right.
Really? I just waited. Mm-hmm. So, and I got $250 the next year. But nowhere did I shell that money out of my pocket. I simply waited. How did I figure out that opportunity cost? Well, you told me that, oh, I could have taken this $200 and invested it somewhere else. So that is actually, remember in 220, Carly, opportunity cost. So that's really the difference between an accountant and what they do in the business school. In the business school, it's all private projects. So they're really looking at it much more with an accounting kind of lens. Right. As opposed to some of the stuff we'll talk about at community levels or at government levels, where they're really looking at, oh, if I don't spend the money on this project, I could spend it on this project over here. Right. So I'm measuring costs slightly differently.
Okay.
Cool. So that's really why we get so obsessed with all this stuff. And it's a bit confusing, but you'll get more into it by the time we get to chapter 1, which I think is next week we'll be looking at, okay, let's overview this thing. Now that we know what we're talking about, we can overview, because it's really a point of view thing. Right? So for this one, we never really, we just put out $200, right? We never, and then we waited. But somehow we have ourselves costing ourselves 12% a year. That's really the cost of waiting to us. And we determine that. And we determine it by looking at all our other investment options. And economists assume that you've got it down to your 2 best options.
Yeah.
Sometimes we don't. Sometimes we have 5 best options. Sometimes we're clueless. But we always act like we've somehow winnowed it down to our best options. Because we would assume that we're all smart people and we're all going to be looking around trying to find the best investment options. If we're investors, we're serious about this. If someone's investing money in a savings account, I'm just going to look in the eye and say, you're not a serious investor.
Right.
You're a recreational saver and you're doing a bad job at that. Because that's really no really return nowadays. You're not making anything on a savings account. So if you're saving in a savings account, not a good idea. So anyway, so here, this one is worth $23.21. Then we come down here and we look at this one. Let me pull it out a little more so you can see. Okay, so this one, we get to year 5 and we get $300. Now, if you look at this thing, it's kind of hard to tell which one of these is better, because this one, you get your money back really fast. So if you were a business person, I'm thinking you're probably going to be thinking, oh, wow, you get your money back real fast. And in the payback system where you weren't accounting for the time value of, all this time value empirically, like with hard numbers, you would see this one as being attractive because it was a quick payback. But you come down to this one and you have an outlay of $100 year 1, and then you have to wait till clear out here in year 5 before you see your $300 return. So when we do the MPV at 12%, right here, we see in fact that this returns, reasonably well. You get $70 above that 12% requirement, right? So the same thing, B12 is right here. That's the interest rate. Then you're discounting these, and these you have to put in those hard zeros or it's going to think that they're waiting 1 year, because every time you put in a number, it knows that's a time period that you've waited. So here's the time that's getting, or the money that's getting discounted. And then lastly, you add back in this one, which does not get discounted. So you come up with this MPV of $70.23. So again, if you look at this, you're saying to yourself, well, B looks pretty good, but if you come up here, you really have to wait 5 whole years to get this thing. And it may be something that you're really not sure about these numbers. $300, are we really sure that we're going to get $300 in 5 years? It can be a little dicey. So that's kind of some of the problems we deal with when we do these. So we try to kind of build in some different ways to look at it. And that's what the IRR is. Now you notice both of these have the exact same IRR. And so that is a problem when you're looking at this first one, because you're getting this 250, and if you're computing an IRR, you're thinking this 250 is invested at 25%. That's how come it's, because here you see the MPVs are not the same. B is more attractive. You are making more than 12% on both of them, but B looks like it really is the better option. But the IRRs come out the same. That's because this 250, when you do an IRR, you're assuming you invest everything at that amount. It's like a break even. So it's equalized across time to come up with that answer. So it's acting like you invest this 250 at 25% for 5 years when you get the money, but you don't do that. You don't know what you do with it. You get this 25%. What the heck? There it sits in my checking account. What do I do with it, right? It may not be enough to start a new project, because 250 is not that much money. Can I get a new project going with only 250, or do you need to save some more? So this is some of the stuff that practically comes into concern when you're thinking about this. So when we're looking at this, what do we do? Well, remember me saying there's some ways to cope with it. One of it is the reinvestment rate. So right here, it tells you that when you get money in, it's reinvested at 7%. It's not reinvested at 12. You reinvest it in a money market fund, you get 7% until you can accumulate enough to start a new project. This is what I call lumpiness. If I'm gonna buy a house, it's very expensive. $250 is getting me nowhere towards a down payment. So I have to do some serious saving in a money market account to accumulate enough for another down payment. And that's what I do. So as soon as money comes in, I slush it into a high yielding money market until I accumulate enough to buy another house or accumulated enough to do an improvement in an existing house. So this is the same thing. So in order to fix these things, what they're doing is with reinvestment, then you're taking project A and you're moving this 250 out to here using a 7% interest rate. And what does that look like? So here, this is the future value. So I take this 250 and I'm figuring what its value is going to be here in year 5. So you can go up here to this future value formula and you will see what it does. It just simply takes this 250, invests it at 7%, and tells me what I'll have at the end of 1, 2, 3, 4 years. And that's the number that shows up right here. So when I do that, then I'm simply saying, okay, if I had this 200 invested, it got me 250, I reinvested at 7%. At the end of year 5, I'm going to have $327.70. So now what we're doing is we can compare this project A with this project B because everything has got the same time frames. We're very clear on what we're doing. The IRR now is 10%, and the NPV is a minus 14.05. And that brings it home on why project B is so much better of an investment. Because you've simply said, okay, I get the 250, I reinvest it for 4 years, and I have $327.70. But I had to invest $200 to get that. Here I have $300, but I only invested $100. So this is really better because this one actually earns 12%. This one is only earning, this one earns 25%. This one's only earning 10, and it has a negative NPV if I was getting a 12%. So I'm not getting 12% on this thing if I'm only reinvesting at 7%. So these are some of the complex decisions that you're really thinking about. Usually on government projects, it doesn't get so convoluted as this because government projects, they don't have lumpy problems, but they do have long-term problems. Do you invest in preschool or do you invest in programs for senior citizens? What gives us a better return? Most people would tell you preschoolers are very, very important. So that probably gives us a much better return because they've got their whole lives of being a good societal member ahead of them. And if we spend more money on preschools, probably would be better. But where do we spend? We spend, I think, 8 times as much on senior programs as we do on preschools. But that's not where the bang for the buck is. The bang for the buck is on the preschool. So somehow we need to start thinking like this. I think, Carly, your project is a good example of we invest more on solving problems in prisons. We have people come out more rehabilitated. It will be much cheaper for us in the long run because prisons are very expensive and they get incarcerated again, way more expensive. So we do us a better turn if we did a better job rehabilitating so we didn't see them back again. And this is an example of how you demonstrate that, although it's a very simple example. But you're going to start now in chapter 3. You're going to start to get into this thing called the reinvestment rate and the fact that you don't have the same time frames on these returns like this thing has, different time frames on returns. And you have to worry about that because most of us will tend to see that quick return as a positive. But if you want to be sustainable, I keep hoping that people will realize what we want to do is wait. So we really want to do long-term thinking. And by trying to look at it this way, this quick cash that just sits around, not attractive. What we want is long-term results. So you can move yourself in a long-term time frame by figuring out, well, what do you do with this money if it comes back quickly? So that's kind of an example there for that homework. So now let's go to another problem from problem homework or assignment 2. I keep blabbing. Well, let's start with the discount rate. So I keep blabbing away on, oh, I know, one more thing. Your book on page 54 to 59 does give you some screenshots on these Excels so you can start seeing what that looks like if you are not comfortable with my stuff. Okay, so your book asks you to recreate these discount tables, and they're in the back of your book on page 341. So I wanted to show you kind of the nuts and bolts of that. So if the discount rate is 3% and you have one time period, then what you're entering in here is basically that formula. So you're actually discounting. So remember, it's 1 divided by 1 plus the interest rate. So 1 plus the interest rate is B. This right here is the interest rate. I'm not sure why it says B8, but I think it's I think I've should be B1 because I've changed it. But anyway, so you go to this one here. So there's the interest rate. So there's the number, and you see these little dollar signs. What's that is doing is this may change. You may be in row 11, but you're always going up here to the one in this column. So this will fix it as always being in the B column and the first position. I think I used to have 8 rows above this that I deleted. So now it's just 8, but it's fixed and it's not messing up, right? It always knows that that's the interest rate. And it always knows right here that this is the year.
Oh, cool. So that's just throwing in a dollar sign. Is that?
If that dollar sign fixes the position, right?
Okay.
So because there's 2 positions, there's your relative and absolute position, right? So you may want to just add 1. Like I start with this one and I add 1. I start with this one and I add 1.
Right.
So I'm not really hard putting in a 1. I'm just saying, oh, go to the previous one and add 1.
Okay.
Right? As opposed to, I'm going to type a 1 here and I always want it to be a 1. So I want to fix it like this one. I want to fix it to be this interest rate. So all the way down here, they're all going to use the same interest rate. But you notice this one is A2. This one is A3, right? So that position, we're always going to the one right next to it. We're always going to the one over here. Right? But every time you scroll down, the one over here goes down 1 too. So it's a relative position. And this, with these dollar signs, is an absolute position.
Cool.
So you can just drag formulas, and you need to experiment with this. You can literally create this spreadsheet very quickly because you just drag formulas around. And it will automatically adjust. And this is actually the discount rate. So $1 invested 1 year at 3%. The present value of $1 that you don't get for a year invested at 3% is worth 97 cents today. And you see, when you get over here at 14%, it's only worth 87 cents today. And then if you come down, again, it really, after 20 years, that dollar at 3% is only worth 55 cents today, where if you get over here in these really far out interest rates, it's worth nothing. So if you have a high interest rate, like 14%, you wait 20 years, it's worth nothing. This is why we make these stupid decisions about the environment and the social structure, because it doesn't matter. If I got to wait 20 years to get a preschooler and they commit a crime and get incarcerated, or get drug addicted and have an OD, well, I'm not thinking about it when they're 2. It has no value, the fact that they're going to lose their life in 20 years when I cannot wait for anything, when I have a 14% interest rate. And remember, mine is 17 in my business. But if you look at the Fed rate, what's the Fed rate, Carly?
Oh, yeah. It was, I think it was at 2.74 or something like that.
Yeah, that's a very low rate. Why is it so low? Because the government is here to do good work for us. They're not here to make money. They're here to make good policy and good, community decisions, right? So the government should be willing to wait, is what we think. So the government rate is usually much, much lower, and it's what we consider to be closer to the true rate or the more accurate cost of waiting that we should be using. And we will make better decisions if we think like this. Unfortunately, politicians, are any of them willing to wait? Particularly in Hawaii, how do we elect politicians? Standing by the side of the road waving. Does that say anything about how they're going to improve our community? And how long do we think about them? 2 years, 4 years? So they're going to only do things that have an impact for 4 years. Because we're not going to think past that. And we're not going to measure what they did. We're just going to see them waving. And we're going to remember the last thing they did. So this is another one of our problems. This is why we like this class, because we like to be data driven. What are we really saying? What really are the costs and benefits that we're talking about, rather than just what we think? And how long will it really take to get it? And what are the actual costs and benefits and net benefits and all these things? So that's why we're trying to get you to really kind of look at this stuff. And you see how quickly you can run this up on Excel if you learn how to drag and drop these formulas. So you need to practice. So this is actually the discount table. The next one they ask you to recreate it. This is why I'm showing it to you. So this is the annuity table. So what does that mean? If you get $100 every year for 20 years at 1%, it's going to be worth $1 is going to be worth for 20 years, $1 a year, every year for 20 years at 1% is worth $18 today. But if you're up here at 14%, yes, 14%, then it's only worth $6 today, because that cost of waiting is so hugely high. And a lot of us think in terms of annuities. For example, why are you going to college? To get a better job. What does that translate to?
More money.
So every year that you could make more money, this is how much over the lifespan of your job, which is how many years have I worked here? 36 years. So I'm down here. So every year that I could get more money is every year that it's worth more to me to get going on that. So that's why we're learning about this, because a lot of us pay consistent sums every year. Like we're saving for college, we're saving for retirement, we're looking for a return from our jobs. Of course, just let me say, because I've learned about this last year, how do we make the most money? Staying in our current job and hoping for a promotion, or changing jobs?
Changing jobs.
Always make more money changing jobs. Mm-hmm. They don't realize what you're worth until you go on the market. This is another thing where people have a hard time. What is something worth? In a market economy, it's how much you buy and sell it for. That's why it's very hard when stuff is not bought and sold for us to figure out what it's worth. But if you want to know what you're worth, put yourself on the market, and you will find out very quickly. So that's what you're recreating, that annuity table on page 341, and you're basically saying, what's the value of $1 that I receive every year for 10 years if you're here, 4 years if you're here, and then this is my return on that I wanted, or my opportunity cost of waiting. Does it make sense?
Yes.
And this is assignment 2, asks about these things, and everybody gets very confused. So I'm keep trying to kind of show you what these Excel files look like. So when you're looking at the theory, you're thinking, okay, so how would I ever use this? This is how you would use it. Any questions? Keith?
No, I'm good. I'm good. Thank
Okay.
you.
So we should be now, so then we should, I think, have a little bit more tomorrow. I was hoping people would start submitting things, but not much has come in. So I'm just going to keep on going, and then we can always look at recorded videos. But I'm trying to follow along with your homeworks as you're going along. So tomorrow I'll look at the homework assignments and try and figure out what might cause everybody problems so we can troubleshoot it. And then next week we should be on chapter 1. This is kind of coming from chapter 3. I think tomorrow we also maybe need to go over a few things. A lot of the problems we're having in this class is you don't know what these words mean. So I'll go through the assignments and the homeworks and get the words, and we'll review them tomorrow so everybody's not ripping their hair out trying to figure out what we're talking about. Because I don't think the vocabulary is something people are familiar with.
Yeah, it's not the most intuitive thing in the world. But.
No, particularly we're also having a problem because we're mixing up 3 different vocabularies. Economics, opportunity cost, finance, all this net present value, future value, discount rate, and then accounting. We're going to start talking about that because we're actually going to talk about something called depreciation and cost accounting, where, I'm only looking at the money that flowed out of my pocket. I'm not looking at the cost of the experiences that I gave up. And in fact, I think homework 2 starts asking about, okay, the college education example. How much is that college education worth? Because I don't think people really think about it. Although I read this morning that a lot of people are not counting on paying back their student loans. This is going to be very expensive. Because we got to pay for that. And then what it tells me is they over invested in that education. So maybe you should not have gone to that high-end private school. Maybe your local state university like UH is really a bargain. And maybe you could have got, Bio 101, is it really going to be better at Harvard or not? That's really becoming the question, because if you're investing a ton of money in this education, you're really looking for some sort of payback out of that or some sort of net benefit stream out of that. And I'm not quite sure people really think of it that way, because I think we're geared that, we have to go to a high-end school. I'm not sure that that's always the case, actually. So we'll talk about that tomorrow because I think that's on the homework list. Okay, so we're going to stop the share. And if no one has any questions, then we're going to end the meeting. And then, Carly, you need a post, right?
Yes. So tomorrow I'm going to be on a plane during that time. So yeah, I can always just email you and remind you too afterwards.
Yeah, I've got some other requests. I think Sienna's on a plane too. So,
okay.
And Keith, if you need any of these audios, let me know, because I can file drop. It works pretty quickly. So
yeah, I got those other ones. It was perfect.
Yeah, and they're just like movies, right? They're yeah, works great. I just wish I could upload them on Lalima, but
yeah,
one of them.
It would probably just explode Lalima. It's already pretty.
Yeah, I guess it's a bandwidth problem. I guess I don't know. Anyway.
Yeah, well, we get unlimited storage on Google Drive.
Yeah. Oh, the other thing, and let me just say this right now because it's going to be recorded, is if you're going to do a Google Docs, could you download it as an Excel spreadsheet? It's very hard for me to go into these Google Docs and try and edit them. Because when you send me the assignments, I literally go in there and edit it and point at it and say why it's wrong and try this. And I go through the formulas. Because you see, this is kind of, you can make mistakes, and sometimes it takes me a while to find them. Because it's not that obvious, because you see, you start assigning cells and I have to track down all your cells and make sure that I can find your error. I'm pretty good at it, but sometimes I do get a little flummoxed.
Fair.
So just warning you that sometimes is an issue. So definitely I'll check the box today to see if anybody turned anything. I'm not hearing a lot from a lot of people, so I'm thinking no one's doing much yet.
I think I turned in an assignment today.
Oh, I'm going to grade it then. That'll be good, because that'll let me see what you're not getting. even though I'll try not to call you out or anything, but it's really good for me to see what you're not getting.
Oh no, yeah, I'm someone, I just move forward. It's like, if this is what I think it's supposed to be, you know, and then you tell me it's something different, that's the learning process.
Right. Another thing you can do, and some people will shoot me an email like, oh, I got this answer, or I'm at this point and I got this. That's a freebie. I will literally tell you, oh no, this is what like one student actually sent me the formula on scanned a piece of paper, and I was like, no, that's wrong. Here's how you set it up. So once you get the setup, you can usually get the answer.
Right.
It's the setup in these things that is the killer. And also, when we actually do a full-blown benefit cost analysis, this discussion of assumptions is very, very kind of interesting about how I might discuss it and how you might discuss it. And I tend to have more patience, because this is kind of the fun for me to sit and figure out, okay, what would be the number that we would use, and debate with myself about it. So that's kind of something I may think is fun and you may think is frustrating. So we get different responses on that sometimes, which is interesting. Okay, so no questions, and we're going to end the meeting.
All right.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, bye.
Thank you. Bye.